Hi, I'm Kelsey from Bluesky Feed Creator. In this video, I'll walk you through our new feature, which is custom poster permissions. This feature allows you to set different permissions for different people, deciding what you want to do with posts from them. I've made a test feed. And so far, there's not much in it aside from some basic terms which relate to a few of my interests. I've got one exclusion where I've just used a wild card, the asterisk. So I'm excluding all labeled posts, which will include not safe for work, nudity, and so on. I'm going to scroll down now to where it says allowed users and lists, and I'm going to click on manage allowed users and lists. In here, I can set some custom permissions for the people I see in my feed. Back on the main feed dashboard, you can see that I've left this toggle on capture posts from all users. That means that my feed is going to pull posts in from the fire hose, the wider Bluesky environment, not just from users that I've decided to include. You can use custom poster permissions with capture posts from specific users too. Back on this page, we've got some new information here, which I encourage you to read when you first sit down to try this out. The new permissions that I'm going to set, as we can see, will override some of my normal feed settings, such as inclusion terms, manual approval terms, post languages, and include replies. But it will not override these other feed settings, such as exclusion terms and posts with images, GIFs, or video, and quote posts. So those are the two things which are non-negotiable. Exclusion terms will always be run against posts coming into your feed and excluded if they match them. And also these post types, we don't have a way to change those. However, we do have this new way so that lists or posting individuals can have different settings on their inclusion terms and these other things. I've found some lists of people who I want to have in my feed, and I'm going to add them now. Remember, when you're adding a list, you can do it using the three-dot link. And I'm just going to copy the URL straight into this box here and click on Add List. As you can see, I've got this blue message which has popped up saying users from the list Kiwis are now allowed to post to the permissions testing feed. On a starter pack, it's a little bit different. We're going to click on the three-dot menu and share link, and then this box comes up and I can click on copy link. Add list, copy the link in. There we go. Now that I've got all of these in here, we can see that each of them has their own little box. And if I go back to my main dash, and I'm going to click refresh, and this allowed users and lists area will look slightly different. So now it says posts from 342 users will not require approval. So that's all of the people in the list. All of the lists that I have added add up to 342 users. So now I'm back inside the allowed users and lists area, and I'm going to fiddle with some of the permissions. At the moment, the default behavior for this is that inclusion terms will be allowed or approved through, and that's the same as just the basic feed. The difference is that I'm getting these posts from just people in these lists. But I might decide that for So Sky, I would like to have any post allowed or approved. And maybe with any reply, I specifically want to exclude those. Now this retains what I've chosen. So if I click back and forth, I can see that the things that I've picked out have been retained. And every time I make a change, so for example, I might want to exclude replies from everyone. Up in the top right hand corner, I see this black box coming up that says list permission added, and that is auto saving as I go. So now I'll set a couple of other permissions. The way that this works, the hierarchy that it goes in, it looks at inclusion terms first, and any posts that match the inclusion terms, the action required is done to them. Then it goes and looks at other posts from users on the list, and then it looks at other replies. So if you set your inclusion terms to do one thing and every post from a user has an inclusion term in it, then there will be no need for these. These are just for posts that don't fit in with your main inclusion terms for your feed. Down in the individual posters area, I can add a user. Maybe I want to hear from the New York Transit Museum. Now, this user exists on a list that I have already put in, which is the museums list. But maybe I want to know about something else from the New York Transit Museum. So at the moment, they're in this list. So museums and libraries, posts that come through that with inclusion terms, which given my inclusion terms, it'll be things probably about sewing and needlework, I reckon. If anything with the inclusion terms comes through, then it will be allowed. For the New York Transit Museum, I have the idea that maybe I would like to hear all of their posts. And so if I do this, then every post from the New York Transit Museum will come into my feed. I've got another user here who is an embroiderer, and I'm going to copy a link to their profile and put it in like this as well. This is another user who is already in here on a list. They are on the So Sky list, but I only want to get posts from So Sky that match my allowed inclusion terms, whereas this person only posts embroidery, which is all relevant to my interests, so I would really like to have all of their posts, and that's what I've done there. So with the New York Transit Museum, we can see that any of their posts will be allowed. And the same with Victoria Rose Richards. Any post will be allowed, which of course also means that posts with inclusion terms will come in too. Individual permissions could be useful for things like if you have made a feed that is entirely around your personal interests. A lot of this feed is around my interests, but then you also had close friends that you wanted to keep in touch with, or you wanted to keep up to date and make sure that you knew what was going on with them, that you saw all of their posts, maybe even all of their replies to people. It would also be helpful if maybe you had an organization like a sports team that you followed, and there might be a list with all of the team members, but possibly you had a particular team member who you wanted to see more content from. You can do it this way. If I ever want to check whether a user can post in here, I can do check the status of a particular user. So if I go to one of my lists here, I can copy the link to the profile right here in Bluesky Feed Creator. And if I go back, then I can click on check the status of a particular user, copy that handle in, or that profile URL, and I can see that the posts do appear and they will never require approval. And that's because of the list that this person is in. Of course, the other thing I should have mentioned is that you can require approval for particular post types, whether they've matched on inclusion terms or they're a post or a reply that doesn't match on the inclusion terms. You can require approval, which will kick them into your manual approval queue. In my actual feed, Can see there's lots of posts coming in that are visible. And if I had anything flagged for manual approval, those posts would come in here and I would have the option to approve or deny them. To summarize, custom poster permissions is a great way of setting different expectations for what kind of posts and from who will appear in your feed. And you can do that per user and you can do that per list. And it's totally fine if a user is also in one of your lists because their user permissions will override the permissions of the list that they are on. If you have any questions about this, feel free to get in touch with us on Bluesky. We are blueskyfeedcreator.com. We are also available via email if you are already using our service and you are in need of support. And don't forget to check out our help page up at the top where you can find answers to lots of your questions. We've got other tutorials as well, such as how to set up a feed using Bluesky Feed Creator and how to run your moderation on Bluesky Feed Creator. You can subscribe if you're interested in seeing more tutorials from us and let us know what's helpful for you.